analyzing the metal samples, which was done by Marcel Vogel, and I think a number of times he had Jim Hurtak, J.J. Hurtak, with him when the analysis was being done. And that is much more compelling to me, the analysis that was done by Marcel Vogel of the metal samples.
Well, let's get into that. What were the metal samples? How were they allegedly retrieved?
Yeah.
And what was found?
They were allegedly handed to Billy Meyer by one of the extraterrestrials in a box one night, and Billy gave them to the group, Lee, Tom, Britt, Wendell, the following day when they were coming back to the United States. They got back to the United States, and one of the first things that we did, they brought them to me, and I laid them out on the floor. I had a studio at the time up at Scottsdale Air Park, and we took all the samples and laid them out. They were rocks. They were black sand looking. They were silver solder looking. None of it looked exotic. There were 4 stages of their materials. There was an explanation from them to Billy, to the group, to me, on how they were made, what they did, how were these 4 stages all about. We'll get to that in a minute. We laid them all out, we inventoried them, and then we set out to decide, well, how are we going to have them tested? Well, we need to put in some controls of things that we know what they are. Hey, this looks like silver solder. Let's put in some real silver solder. This looks like black sand. Let's put in some other black sand. And we created a little kit. First kit went to Dr. Walter Weir, materials scientist at the University of Arizona. He did his series of tests. In fact, one package was sent to Omni magazine. This is when we were young and foolish. And, one package was sent there. One package went to MIT. And one package, after careful study, I determined that this guy, Marcel Vogel, who was a scientist at IBM and was one of the founding members of the Mandala Society and the Noetic Sciences Foundation, would be a good person to go to. So we went to him, and he used his advanced microscope lab to analyze the different materials. Now, because we had put controls in, sample 1B and 9C, whatever, we knew what the numbers referred to.
Right.
So we expected that this sample would be silver solder, and this sample would be, a piece of granite. But 2 of the samples in particular were bizarre to Marcel Vogel and to all of us, because in his destructive and non-destructive testing, he found that in this one particular sample that it showed traces of atomic elements 1 through 59, half of the periodic chart, all in one substance. All in one substance. Now that includes noble gases that don't combine with anything. And to find all of those elements in one substance was completely startling to Marcel. The second thing, when he polished it and looked at it under a scanning electron microscope, found that there were organic materials, unburned, nestled right up against materials that were melted, like thulium and platinum that melt at 2,600 degrees, with little pieces of fern organic materials, biofringent materials, interlaced with high-temperature metals.
And what did this material look like to the eye? Was it
Well,
one that looked like a rock? Or?
It looked like a glump of solder, of melted silver solder. Okay, a glump, and it was sliced and then polished.
Gotcha.
And he couldn't explain it. He couldn't explain how it could be made. He couldn't make it. And he was one of the key members of the team at IBM that had developed some things like color television phosphors, magnetic floppy disk emulsion, advanced materials for the time. And he gave us a 2-hour videotape report, which we still have, of course, look with the images through the microscope. And what he was saying, look, I can't imagine how this would be made or where it would come from or how it would be done. And with all the controversy that was going on in the pictures, and a lot of mean-spirited people, what they had to say about the Meyer case, it was decided that the UFO community was not the place to platform the findings on a daily or regular basis. There would be some books published, and it would be released to the UFO community and the mass population at the same time. And that was it. There was no obligation to the UFO community to show anything to them, because there was not a sense of science, peer review, dignity. There wasn't, and I'm sorry to say, to this day, pretty much still isn't, and it's even worse.
Well, and I know what you mean, and really, I think whenever I think towards this field, it's important to think bigger than and outside of just the small UFO community, because really that's not who we're talking to anyway. We want to convince and show the conventional academics out there that there's some credible stuff and that it's worth spending their time looking at some of this.
Yes.
So I would understand why you would want to do that, and I think that's a better avenue.
And there's also one other thing to consider, and that is that if extraterrestrials come here and they can communicate with us, that if extraterrestrials didn't want there to be a cover-up, there wouldn't be one.
Gotcha.
That they allow it to happen. In fact, they may encourage it to happen. And then it becomes an analysis of why do they think like that? Is it something sinister? Are they going to, cook us and eat us later? Or do they have some purpose in their remaining separate because maybe they want to see how we're going to go with our own free will and our own destiny? Because in the meantime, they behave like a covert operation. They're here, they're gone. They're there, they're not.
Right.
Pass through walls, kidnap people, abduction, kidnapping. It's against, you can't do that. That's illegal. You go to jail for life if you kidnap people. And extraterrestrials seem to do it at will. Now, is it for some positive reason that we don't really understand? Is there something that we have that they're really interested in? So the analysis of the pictures and the UFO cases, of the hundreds and hundreds of cases that I've analyzed pictures, it became more important for me to do it for me to understand what was going on, not for me to be a conduit to every time I had something to turn around and shout it out there to the world or to the media, because there was not very much positive that was going to come of it. People would say mean things, lies, create problems, which I had to deal with a lot over the years.
Well, especially people like Billy Myers, especially the experiencers or the abductees, that they often such as Travis Walton, or even some of Robbie Williams was saying this week, who's the star who came out to say he believes in UFOs. They start to say, I wish I never would have opened my mouth and even gone there, because people just get too crazy about it or mean. Do you have that feeling at all?
Oh, yes, of course.
Really?
Well, I mean, there have been things said about me by a particular group going back many, many years that there's no foundation in fact at all. But because of their vocal approach, Cal Korff, one in particular that said and wrote things about me and other UFO investigators, had no basis in fact or truth at all whatsoever, became viewed as fact by the UFO community and the general public. And even though Cal Korff has been summarily discredited now, no one has gone back and undone the damage that he did.
Right.
And people, most of what people believe about the Billy Meyer case is based on things that Cal Korff claims he discovered or he did or he said, which people now have found out that it was all lies.
Yeah.
He didn't have any scientific ability at all. He didn't have any team. He wasn't working at all these places doing these things. But people say that the Billy Meyer case is not true, generally because of what Cal Korff said, and that the messengers of the Billy Meyer case of the last few years have been UFO merchants.
All right.
I mean, they're selling stuff. CDs, public lectures, whatever, for the purpose of making a living, and that's it. I mean, and it's okay to make a living in things in the paranormal if you're making a living distributing the truth, the facts, but distributing information just based on whatever somebody says or thinks that moment and packaging it up and rolling it out there so that you can, like a carnival huckster, collect the money, has added insult to injury on the Billy Meyer case and other quality cases where people throw out the baby with the bathwater. And that's it.
Well, it's easier to be a debunker or a skeptic, it would seem, because there are a lot of people who it's too difficult to think of the implications of what some of these findings are.
Yes.
It's easier just to be able to bury your head in the sand, and the media loves to jump on that. A lot of people still believe that crop circles are all made by these two old guys that after they're drinking at the pub, they're going out and making all these huge crop circles overnight and all over the world. Or, there's a number of other stories like that. But that's the easy way out, it would seem. So, unfortunately, a lot of people take the easy road.
Yeah. Who else can we pick on?